What you have always heard is that when you get to retirement, your assets need to become less risky. What we know at Financial Enhancement Group is that your investments should be based on your needs, not based on your age. Join us as we talk about what we mean when we say this and how you can really reconstruct your portfolio based on your needs going forward. Hello and welcome to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Jamie Burton.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
So great to have you here today, Grant.
Happy to be here.
When we have families come in to Financial Enhancement Group, there are a lot of things that we have to talk about, but one of the big things that people really want to focus on is their investments. People have a lot of emotions tied into looking at their statements, looking at what they have saved for all of these years that they've been working, what it's invested in, the different returns that they're getting. It's really important to them, and it's very emotional. It's an emotional thing that is wrapped around whether they think they're being successful or not. What we know is that when people are looking at their investments, when they are getting to a point where they're saying, hey, I think I'm ready to retire, they have been ingrained over the years and years and years that, okay, you've gone to retirement. Now your investments need to be less risky. You need to be investing in 40% bonds and the 60% in the investment market, and that's going to get you where you need to go.
Right.
What we know at Financial Enhancement Group is that things are always changing.
Yes.
And that mindset has changed. And we are going to talk about that today. So Grant, when we are looking at people coming in and they're getting ready to go to retirement, how do you walk them through when they have the mindset of, okay, now it's time to switch my assets to be less risky?
100%. And I appreciate you for teaming me up for this, Jamie. Like you said, this is a massive psychological shift. When you're turning now, looking at this nest egg and trying to create it into an asset. And really, just like how you approach conversations with elderly parents about becoming a trustee or executive of an estate, when you're approaching yourself and we're approaching families, I like to start with questions. Right? What is the intended design for this? What are we wanting this asset to do? Is it going to be income producing? Are we leaving it behind for a family? I like to engage in conversation because, to your point, it starts to bring up some of the entrenched mindsets and thinking that people have been conditioned to believe. For example, I think we talked about this many times with families together. Many people can remember that old AIG commercial, Jamie, where people were walking around with this number, right? And there was a guy trimming his hedges, and it was a number, and this lady was walking her dog, and her dog was a number, and we've conditioned ourselves to believe that a number is the signal or indicator or the master indicator of success. And we know it's not, right? A number is just a number. Really what you have to boil it down to is understanding what your standard of living is. And we always come back to this almost every show, and that if you're going to understand how to reconstruct a portfolio, you need to understand what your income needs are, what your tax situation is, what your fixed income is, and then you construct a portfolio based on what you're looking to accomplish. And one of the hardest things for us to do, Jamie, as advisors across the board is to look at a family and say, listen, you have worked for 20, 30, 35 years to save this money. And it reached a mythical number where it actually started taking on a personality for you. And the running joke we have in the firm, it was started by Joseph Clark, our managing partner, is many of the families, if they could, they would invite it to Thanksgiving dinner because it means that much to them, right? And if you hold on to the emotion inside of that and you start thinking, oh, this one big nest egg, this one big bucket must be my end-all, be-all, you get into trouble. And so we try to design for our families and people who come in at the Financial Enhancement Group is we try to design and restructure mindset. How do we play an efficient tax game? And then how do we divide up these resources to do jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And so back to the mindset you brought up earlier, 60-40. That's what you and I were trained in college because Jamie and I went to Purdue University, boiler up. And we studied certified financial planning at Purdue. That's what our degrees are in. And we were told, point blank, it was in our books that we paid hundreds of dollars for. Success is 60-40. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you it's not. Today's environment does not allow for 60-40 across the entire board to be efficient. Buckets of money must do certain things depending on your situation. If you haven't evaluated all of the other critical elements that Jamie brought up in the beginning of the conversation, then you're really not going to be set up for success in reconstructing your portfolio at all. So, Jamie, to answer your question, it's needs-based. It's a function of need of money, not age, not purpose, not desire. And also, many times, folks, you're going to be living 15, 20, 25 years in retirement. So going conservative, especially in this environment today, may not lead you up for success.
Absolutely. And it's a hard conversation to have, like Grant was saying, because it is such an ingrained mindset in your head that, okay, I'm at retirement, I can't be taking risks anymore. But you need to look at the whole picture. You have to take a step back and you have to look at the fact that, okay, I have saved all of this money up. And yes, I'm going to need this portion of it in the short term. I'm going to need it in the next 3 to 5 years. But this larger portion that I've worked hard for and saved up, I'm not going to need it right away. So why wouldn't I take a little bit more risk on it? Why wouldn't I know that I need this money for the next, like Grant said, 15, 20, 25 years? Let's see if we can get that to grow a little bit more, while we know that this smaller bucket of money is not going to be growing like we need it to, because we need to live off of it.
Right.
So it's a function of each individual. Each person is different. Each family is different. But you have to really take a step back, look at the full picture of what a family has going on, and really determine what makes sense to, yes, be more conservative, but what makes sense to still be taking some more risks on, to be trying to earn a little bit more gain, so this money is not going to outlive each individual person.
I may add something else to that, Jamie, as well. And this goes back to the heart of the subject matter here, right? Which is, reconstructing the portfolio. That doesn't just mean, so when Jamie says we're looking for growth, we're not just looking at focusing on growth stocks, right? Because the environments and the condition have to be right long term for those to prevail. And when you're in certain market conditions that are poor, or there's, and other concerns globally, economically, market-wise, you have to have a portfolio that's nimble enough to adjust for the mid and long term to capitalize on some of that success in the short term based on changing conditions. Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying go out and start day trading, right? And to use headlines as a way to find quick return. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying understand the difference between growth investing and value investing and the environment that you're stuck in, and stick to a process. And so I just want to add that element in there, Jamie, because it's, money is a function of utility, not age, but it's also needs to be nimble enough to take advantage of current situations so that we can still continue to combat inflation and also grow the portfolio long term and also have income needs short term.
Absolutely. And Grant's talking about having this process in place. The reason that it's so important to have a process in place is because of the industry that we're in, the world that we're in. It is ever changing. There are so many changes that are made regularly. So a lot of the times when we have families come in, we see that the decisions that they've made are based on old ideas. They're based on something that made sense when they were first investing 20, 25 years ago. Like, yes, you were making great decisions then. Like that's exactly what you needed to be doing then. But because you weren't continuing to have these conversations and you weren't continuing to reevaluate what you have going on, it can now be an old idea. It's an idea that was good and was the right thing to do, but because things have changed, there's a much more efficient way that you can do things. There's a much better way to get you where you need to go, be more successful in where you need to go, and do it in a way that it's really not very painful to do it. You just need to make sure you have the right people telling you these are the right decisions to be made. And that's why having a financial advisor is so beneficial, because things are ever changing. It's our job to know those changes. It's our job to keep on top of the tax code changes. It's our job to keep on top of the estate planning changes. And those are changing all the time. So we don't expect people to stay on top of all of these changes when it's not the number one thing you do. I wouldn't want to go into a doctor's office and try to diagnose somebody when they have something going wrong. I wouldn't be able to open up my car hood and be able to just know what's wrong, and it's smoking. It's an expertise. It's something that you have to stay on top of and really be focused on in order to be able to stay on top of all of these changes.
And one other element, Jamie, I'll add if you don't mind. Part of the benefit of a team like ours is we have an internal investment squad. We have, our chief investment officer, our chartered market technician. We have another young gentleman who's studying to get his CFA. We have an internal investment team. And, Joe's always looking at the narrative. And so it's so important to have that for us because as advisors, we're supposed to be keeping abreast on all the big significant changes in planning. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky to have this team that's not over in D.C. or New York or California that I can pick up the phone. I can say, hey, Andrew, Adam, Zach, here's what we're thinking about in this reconstruction. Where are we at as far as market conditions, or what's our process tell us? And so that you and I can visually help families through that. And so we're very blessed to have that as a team, and it's a very powerful resource because, again, the advisors, it's like Jamie said it's impossible to know everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we have the same mindset for our advisory team, is that we know that there's so much that goes into financial planning, that the investment side is just one of it. The tax planning side is just one of it. Then you have the beast of Social Security, and you have all of the rules around 401ks and IRAs. And nobody is expected to be a pro in all of these areas. We have a team that we get to rely on where one person really knows Social Security and Medicare, where another one is really abreast of all the rules for 401ks. So having a team is so important. If you would like to talk to somebody on our team, please give us a call at 800-928-4001.